Hey there everybody, welcome to Auto Bears, and this is the Genesis G70 shooting brake. Now, before the meteoric rise of SUVs, if you wanted a practical family car, you went with an estate because you had a very practical vehicle with the driving dynamics of a saloon or hatchback. It was a win-win situation. However, with the rise of SUVs, we have seen the decline of estate cars, especially with Volvo, who are axing their estates from the UK in 2023. But there are other terms for estate cars from other manufacturers. Audi call them Avants, BMW call them Tourings, and there's even the term shooting brake. Now, technically, shooting brake is actually for a coupe car that's been turned into an estate. But Genesis have been quite quirky, and Jaguar for that fact, because they have a shooting brake as well. But with Genesis we have this, the G70 shooting brake, which has been designed specifically for the UK and Europe. Now, I drove this for the first time a couple of years ago in Lisbon at its international launch, and finally I've got one here to test on UK roads. And well, I'm going to let you know how it fares up in the UK, and also, being a shooting brake, does it have not just the practicality, but sexiness of a coupe turned into an estate? Stick with me to find out. So when it comes to the shooting brake styling, at the front it's business as usual. We got the massive grille, the split headlights to represent the shield and wings of the Genesis badge, and it is instantly recognizable as a Genesis. Now, what I like is that with the G70 compared to the G80, it looks a little bit softer, a little bit more youthful compared to its bigger brother. And I definitely think that does kind of appeal to younger drivers, like young business execs who want something different in the car park compared to the usual executive German lot. But it's at the back of the shooting brake where things look really gorgeous, where we've got those very distinctive tail lights, we've got that sweeping rear end, just like a coupe, and the floating spoiler. It's definitely much sexier than its German rivals. But let me know what you think of the G70 shooting brake styling in the comments section below. I actually do like the Savile Silver and the 19-inch alloy wheels you've got on this particular car. Both of them are optional extras. But yeah, I really love just the look of the G70 as a saloon, but especially as a shooting brake. It does show that it's a practical little car, but very sexy as well. And when I say little car, I mean small executive shooting brake. And anyway, on that note, I think it's time that we look inside and see what Genesis have done with the interior. Sat in the front of the G70 shooting brake, you are greeted by an interior that is very comfortable, jam-packed full of kit and well screwed together. It's one thing I love about Genesis interiors, they do feel pretty special. Now, the one thing I will say is that yes, this is jam-packed full of kit because I have got pretty much every optional extra fitted to this car, and if you want to know what has been added, please check in the description below. Now, when it comes to getting in and out of the G70, it is a little bit tricky because it does sit a little bit lower than its German rivals. So if you do suffer from any kind of mobility issues, look at the GV70 SUV, because that is, well, an SUV, so you do sit higher up. It's easier to get into. And I will be honest, when it comes to the interior, it feels a bit more special. And that's the only kind of downside I've got to the G70's interior, is that it doesn't have that unique feel to the other cars that Genesis produce. But there's a main reason for that, because when I sit here, I can tell that Genesis are gunning for the Germans in terms of the layout, in terms of just how everything's set up. And that's no bad thing, because it's showing that they are taking that class of car seriously. So everything is really nicely and ergonomically laid out. Now, when it comes to interior quality, with Genesis, of course, this is a highlight. We have got soft touch plastic here on top of the dash and on top of the doors. We got leather here on the center console and also on the dashboard. We've got Nappa leather here on the door panels as well. So it does exude this kind of quality feel to it, which is really no surprise to a Genesis. As always, when you sit in here, it does feel very special. I mean, we've even got proper metal trim here on the center console. So yeah, It does give that premium feel, and it does feel just like a Genesis, but it does lack that little X factor you get with things or cars like the GV70, G80, and also the GV60. When it comes to cubby spaces, I'm going to say it's not too bad in here. We got some reasonable sized door pockets where you can get a medium sized bottle of drink in there, but they're not lined with any fabric, so loose items will rattle around a bit. Now ahead of the gear lever, we have got a little space with a wireless charging pad, which is rubber lined. Your phone isn't going anywhere. And you've got a USB-A socket there, as well as a 12-volt socket. Then just behind the gear lever, we have got two cup holders, which are of actually a very decent size and depth. And the plastic grippers in there really do hold your drink in place. I have had to kind of wrestle a coffee cup out of there on a couple of occasions. It does a very good job. Now just behind there, we have got, underneath your armrest, another USB-A charging input, as well as a bit of additional space, which is lined with fabric, so loose items shouldn't make much of a noise in there. And then finally, we have got the glove box, which is lockable. And that is lined with fabric, and it is of a decent size. Now, the book pack isn't in there because Genesis have been pretty smart and they've put it in the boot. So you can use the glove box for more than just the book pack, and you've got a little pen holder in there as well. So I do like that feature, and the fact that, again, it is lockable. And then finally, we have got a little space there to put your sunglasses. So yeah, when it comes to cubby spaces inside the G70 shooting brake, as I said, they're not too bad in here, but some rivals do have a little bit more space, especially when putting certain items away and just hiding them out of sight. One thing I do love about the G70's interior is that there are loads of buttons in here, but they feel really nicely and ergonomically laid out. So just below the air vents here, we have got your shortcut buttons for the infotainment system with a couple of rotary knobs. Then just below there, we've got your dual zone climate control and your heated and ventilated seat controls, as well as your heated steering wheel controls. And they just got a real nice tactile feel to them. And then just behind the gear lever, which is a nice solid gear lever as well, we have got your drive mode select, which is a little rocker switch, along with a couple of buttons that do things like your parking sensors, 360 camera, and your auto hold, not to mention your electric handbrake. Then on the steering wheel, on the left-hand side, we've got your media and communication controls, and on the right-hand side, we've got your radar-guided cruise control controls, as well as your digital driver controls as well to go through the various menus. Then we've got a couple of flappy paddles there to change gear. And then finally, just underneath the right-hand air vent, we've got a couple of buttons to open the boot and also open the fuel filler cap. So yeah, when I said it's kind of lacking in that X factor that you get from other Genesis cars like the GV70, it makes up for it by just having a really nice ergonomic design. And as I said, all the buttons in here just have a real nice tactile and quality feel to them. So yeah, they make up for the lack of flair in here with just having a really nice ergonomic design. And then finally, we have got the infotainment system and the digital dashboard display. Now, the infotainment system, it looks to be about 10¼ inches. You have got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but unfortunately, it's tethered for both. There's no wireless CarPlay. But just like other Genesis infotainment systems, it's a nice clear system to use. The icons are actually of a decent size and easy to navigate when on the move. And surprisingly for a Genesis car, there's no little touchpad or rotary dial for me to use, especially like as this is going to be a rival to something like BMW with their iDrive system. So it is actually touchscreen only. But as I said, it is actually easy to use, especially when on the move. And then we've got the digital dashboard display, which is a 12.3-inch display. We've got the 3D graphics that we've become used to with Genesis cars. And using the little rocker switch and menu button on the right-hand side of the steering wheel, we can go through the various displays. And what I do love is when you go through the drive modes. So I will say now there are 4 drive modes available. You've got Eco, you've got Comfort, Sport, and Sport Plus, which switches off the traction control. But what I love is when you put it into Sport and Sport Plus, the actual needle for the speedometer actually looks as though it's on fire to let you know you're in sport mode. And not only that, the side bolsters actually grip you. It's a feature I do love on Genesis cars and also on Kia cars as well. So yeah, that's just something I really do like about these types of cars we're getting from Hyundai Group. So when it comes to the infotainment system, it is, like I said, a good display. It's just a shame that we haven't got anything to kind of operate it without using the touchscreen system, because there is a little space here next to the gear lever where you could perhaps have that introduced, maybe for the next generation. So yeah, sat in the front of the G70 shooting brake, it is a very lovely, comfortable place to be, but you can just tell that this has been made to go up against the Germans and just lacks that little X factor that you get from other Genesis cars. But that's not really a massive negative, because I've really enjoyed being in this cabin in the G70. And on that note, I think it's time we leave the front and see what it's like in those back seats. Sat in the back of the G70, it is a little bit disappointing back here, because although the quality back here is really high, the space, not so much. Now that driver's seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide, and as you can see, I've got very limited knee room. I can't get my feet underneath the front seat. But if I do sit upright, my head actually isn't rubbing against the roof lining. So that is one positive, but 6-footers would definitely struggle back here. Also, I would recommend that only 2 people sit in the back of the G70 shooting brake. I wouldn't recommend having anyone, even children, sat on that centre bench because of the transmission tunnel. Now, speaking of kids, we have got ISOFIX supports on the outer seats, and what I do love, it is a little plastic cover with a bit of a pivot on there and a bit of a spring-loaded system, so it means you don't have to remove that plastic cap, which is very handy when affixing a child seat. Cubby spaces are a bit okay as well. We've got some reasonable sized door pockets. Again, you can get a small to medium sized bottle of drink in there, but not lined with any fabric. We have got your aeroplane style pockets on the backs of the front seats, and we have got a centre armrest with a couple of additional cup holders. And I will mention you have got through loading into the boot area, so that is very handy. Now, when it comes to features, we have got a USB-A charging input, just one back here, and we have got heated outer seats, which I really do like. The windows are of a decent size and shape. They are tinted on this particular car as well, but they do open all the way down, which is very handy. And I do love the fact we got soft touch plastic on top, so I can rest my arm there. So yeah, in terms of the quality and some of the features you have, it is very good. It's just a shame that the space is lacking, especially when compared to its rivals. And on that note, I think it's time that we leave the back seat area, even though it is very comfortable, and go see what it's like in the boot. Opening the boot of the G70 shooting brake, which I really love doing because it's this little button here, presents you with 465 litres of space, which is a decent boot capacity. However, when it's kind of compared to its rivals, especially the mainstream estates, it does lag a little bit behind. Now, technically, this car's main rival would be the Volkswagen Arteon shooting brake, and that does have a larger boot capacity, but it just doesn't ooze the sexiness that the Genesis does. Now, when you got the boot open, you are greeted with a nice square boot area. However, the opening, as you can see, is a little bit narrow to incorporate that narrow boot lid. But when you got the boot open, you could get a large suitcase in there or a few weekend bags. Now, it's not devoid of features either. We have got some very sturdy tethering hooks, some shopping hooks, and a 12-volt socket. We also have a couple of handles to make it easy to get the rear seats down. Also, we've got a couple of netted areas on each side and a bit of underfloor storage. We have got the book pack and some netting, but you could also put a couple of extra features or little bits in here and hide them away. Now, the only thing that's disappointing is that this part of the parcel shelf doesn't fit underneath the boot floor. So if you are going to load any large bulky items into the back of the shooting brake, you're going to have to leave that at home. Now, the other thing I will mention is that the boot lip itself is quite high, and there's a little bit of a boot lip on the other side to navigate over, but it's not too bad. So yeah, when it comes to the G70 shooting brake's boot, it is a case of form over function. It is very stylish, but you have got a decent amount of boot space, just not when you compare it to its rivals. But on that note, I think it's time we get the boot shut and take the G70 for a drive. So once you get driving in the G70, first impressions are very positive. And right now I definitely feel like I am in the car's element. I'm driving at 60 miles an hour on an A road. I've got all of the driver aids turned on, and it's just getting me to my destination in the most relaxed and comfortable fashion possible. It really is a lovely place to be. Now, when it comes to visibility, as I mentioned, you do sit a little bit lower than you do its German rivals, but it hasn't really hampered visibility. I've got a really lovely view of the road ahead. I do love the fact I can see the sculptured bonnet ahead of me. The A-pillars are not too thick, and I've not found myself looking around them at any junctions. The wing mirrors are of a really lovely size and shape. I have got blind spot monitoring, and they auto dim as well. And then if I look over my shoulder, yes, I do find there is quite a thick C-pillar there. But as I mentioned, I have got that blind spot monitoring, but also I have got the blind spot cameras, which is something we've become used to with Hyundai Group cars, and I really do love that feature. And the image is crystal clear on the digital dashboard display. And then finally, rear visibility is actually not too bad. The rear headrests do obstruct your rear view a little bit, but it's not too bad. But yeah, all-round visibility on the whole is very good, and I'm very comfortable in here. It's a very comfortable and surprisingly refined place to be. I do like the G70, especially the shooting brake. Now, when it comes to trim levels in the shooting brake range, at the time of recording, there are 3 to choose from. There's the entry-level premium, the mid-range sport, or the top-of-the-range premium that includes the luxury pack, and that's what I've got here, plus a few optional extras. Now, in terms of a recommendation, I mean, I would say just look at the premium, because you can add those optional packs on top of the car. If you want your car to look sporty, both out on the exterior and the interior, then go for the sport. You do get the choice of an additional engine, which has a bit more power and performance, and you do get some sporty brakes as well. They are Brembos. But if you just want to be comfortable and have all the toys, all the bells and whistles, then go for the premium plus the luxury pack plus a few extra optional packs as well. I think the only thing I'm missing from this particular press car is the Space Saver spare wheel, and I'm sure there are some old-fashioned drivers and customers out there that wouldn't mind having that specified. But when it comes to just the car itself, it is very keenly spec'd as standard, so have a look at the premium and just see if you want to add any additional optional packs to it. To be honest, you get a good amount of car for your money, and you do get something that's quite special as well. But I mean, I will be honest, I do love this premium trim with the luxury pack plus the extras as well. It just looks really lovely, and I'm not wanting for anything. I've got everything that I could possibly want and need in the car. But granted, yeah, you do have to pay for it. Now, when it comes to powering the shooting brake, there are 2 engines available depending on which trim level you go for. Now, all trim levels get the 2.2 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged diesel engine, but if you go for the sport trim, you get the option of a 2 litre turbocharged petrol engine, which has more power and performance. But I'm going to focus on the diesel because that's the engine I've got in this particular car. So as I said, it's a 2.2 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged diesel, producing 197 brake horsepower, but more impressively, 440 Newton meters of torque. And that power goes straight to the rear wheels via an 8-speed automatic gearbox, which is Genesis/Hyundai Group's very own. So when it comes to the 0 to 62 time, that takes just 7.7 seconds. And the actual engine itself suits the car really well. There's a really lovely surge when you put your foot down. The acceleration is very torquey. You can feel yourself getting pushed back into the seat. And yeah, via this 8-speed auto, it's just an absolute joy. It feels very quick, very responsive. You can't actually hear and feel the changes as you're driving on your regular day-to-day drive. It just suits the car perfectly. Now, when it comes to economy, even though this is a diesel, yes, it is kind of behind some of its rivals in terms of economy, but this feels like a bit of a sporty diesel engine. Now, Genesis say that I should be able to get just over 41 miles per gallon on a combined cycle, and that's a WLTP cycle. And I believe them. But not only that, I'm currently getting 46 mpg, and I'm doing 60 miles an hour with all the bells and whistles and toys turned on, heated seats, heated steering wheel, radar guided cruise, everything switched on. So I'm actually really impressed by that I can actually beat what Genesis claim. And at 70 miles an hour, I have actually been able to get around 44 miles per gallon. So yes, even then, I can beat what Genesis tell me. But it just suits the car really well. As I said, I'm doing 60 miles an hour now on an A road, and this thing has just settled down and just feels at home. It's really lovely. The other thing as well, I can't hear that engine. The only time you can hear that engine rumbling and you get that diesel grumble is at low speed, where you can just hear it kind of taka 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 through into the cabin. But even then, it's not intrusive. This is a really lovely and refined shooting brake to drive. I know that's a very peculiar sentence to say, but just highlighting the fact that yes, it's a shooting brake. So yeah, when it comes to engines, the diesel, even though it's very much frowned upon, it's bloody lovely. Now, when it comes to the shooting brakes, ride and refinement, this has been another highlight. Now, the first time I drove the shooting brake was on roads in Lisbon. They were lovely and smooth, and I really did enjoy the ride comfort and the refinement, as you would expect. But I'm in the UK, I'm on UK roads, and this is a different kettle of fish compared to the rest of mainland Europe. And I've been really pleasantly surprised. Now, firstly, when it comes to the ride, it's really good. It deals with the bumps and imperfections really well. Now, the other thing as well, these seats are immensely comfortable, and they take a huge amount of vibration of what comes through into the car, whether that be the imperfections on the road or just vibration from the engine. It just deals with them absolutely brilliantly. At low speed, because we have got those 19-inch alloy wheels, if you do go over a pothole or a deep manhole cover, yes, you can get a little bit of a boom and a jolt coming into the cabin, but it's not as bad as what I was expecting it to be. It deals with those bumps and imperfections really well. And then when you get up to speed, you find it settles down really nicely. Yes, some of the vibrations do come through into the cabin, but like I said, these seats take a huge percentage of those vibrations away, and it becomes an effortless, comfortable cruiser. And then comes the refinement. As I've already mentioned, you can barely hear the engine up front. Actually, I can't hear it right now. If I listen out, there is a tiny bit of wind noise coming from the wing mirror and the A-pillar, and the biggest intrusion, which still isn't really much of an intrusion, is tyre roar. But when I'm going on a long trip, if I'm on an A road, if I'm on the motorway, this just settles down and relaxes and becomes very comfortable and very refined. And then comes the highlight in the form of the Lexicon sound system, which is an optional extra. It is a little bit expensive, it's about £800. Oh, it's worth every penny. It's such a brilliant system. I've had friends sat in the front and back of the shooting brake, and they have loved the sound I've been playing in here. They love the music and the quality of the sound system. Particularly in the back, they said there's a real nice 3D feel to the sound. So that's a massive perk and benefit to your passengers. But I've been playing a real nice mix of music in here, and it's a highlight with Genesis cars I've come to experience, whether it be the Lexicon system or the Bang & Olufsen system that I experienced with the GV60. It's just an absolute joy, and again, you have that playing whilst you're on the road. It takes away all those outside noises coming into the cabin, and even though there are outside noises coming into the cabin, they're few and far between. This thing is so much more refined here in the UK than I was expecting it to be. No, just the ride and refinement as you're driving along. is bloody lovely. This is a car I could definitely see myself owning, because it's just lovely and comfortable and has those looks. Now, when it comes to the shooting brakes handling, I'm going to say it is really good, but it is more biased towards being a comfortable cruiser than a sporty handling kind of estate car. This isn't really a match for something like a BMW 3 Series. That is the king of handling in the executive saloon segment. But it is actually just a really nice drive. Now, firstly, the steering wheel is a really nice size and shape, as well as thickness. I love the perforated leather as well that we've got on it. Gives you that sporty feel. And then we got the setup to the shooting brake as well. It is rear wheel drive. So when I chuck the car into the corners, there is a little bit of weight in the steering. You can feel what the front wheels are doing. And because as well it's rear wheel drive, it means, yeah, the rear wheels are doing their bit and the front is doing the steering. So you do feel connected to the car. Now, when you've got it in the, say, eco and comfort drive modes, there is a little bit of roll and lean in the corners. Again, showing you that there is that bias towards it being a comfortable family shooting brake. But when you put it into sport mode, you do find that the steering gets a little bit heavier. The suspension does firm up as well, and it is flatter in the corners. Now, something I really do love about the drive modes is they look awesome on the digital dashboard display, but when you put it into sport and sport plus mode, you can see little flames coming off the needles on the dash. It is really cool. It's a very quirky little feature, and I love the fact that Genesis have done it. Also, when you put it into sport mode, the side bolsters do tighten up and hold you in place. This big bear ain't going anywhere, but it does lack that kind of sharpness that you would expect from something like a 3 Series, but you can still chuck it into the corners and it feels like a really lovely place to be. But just be aware that bias is more towards comfort and a relaxing drive rather than a sporty one. Now, granted, yes, I am driving on an A road as I talk about the handling and steering, but I have put some clips over the top showing me on a twisty bit of road where it is really lovely, and I had it in sport mode as well when I kind of drove on that little bit of road there. So with my time in this shooting brake, what have been some of the highlights and some of the niggles that I've come across? Well, niggles have been very few and far between. In fact, the one that does come to mind straight away is that if I'm driving along, the car is still connected using its internal built-in satellite navigation system. So you do get little bongs in that in reference to things that are up and coming, but you might not see them on, say, your Google Maps. The best example, speed cameras. Now, I do know about the speed cameras on most of the roads I drive on, but sometimes if I'm on a road where I don't know about it, you do get this little bong that lets you know that there's a speed camera there, but there's no other indication, just that little bong. So you have to have the internal sat-nav turned on or switched on so you can see that camera. Otherwise, you're just hearing a bong and have no idea what it's in reference to. But apart from that, I'm really struggling to pick out any other niggles with this car. I love the looks. I love the build quality, the drive, the ride, just everything. It's just a really lovely all-round shooting brake car. Yeah, I mean, I think I just need to jump straight to the conclusion here, because there's very little to kind of nitpick on with this car. So let's do that, straight to the conclusion. So what are my thoughts on the Genesis G70 shooting brake for its full review here on UK roads? Well, I loved it 2 years ago in Lisbon, and I'm loving it even more now here in the UK. It does feel like it's been adapted and suits the UK roads. It is a very gorgeous car. I think this is much better looking than its German rivals, including the Volkswagen Arteon shooting brake. And you get all the technology, safety kit and driver aids that you would want and need. I mean, this is just jam-packed full of kit. Granted, it has got some optional extras, but they really do work for the car. If I had any real negatives, it would be that the practicality isn't that good compared to rivals, but I did say that this is a case of form over function when it comes to practicality. The boot space I am actually quite happy with, even though you've got that narrow shape to the opening, but rear passenger space needs to be improved on. The only other thing I would say is, and I'm not taking credit for this, but when I reviewed the GV80 SUV, their big flagship here in the UK, I said there needed to be a hybrid come out because you could only get that petrol engine, and if you could get 30 mpg out of it, you're having a very good day. So what have Genesis done? Well, they're bringing out a GV80 coupe with a hybrid engine, with hybridization. Yes, thank you very much, Genesis. Even though I think, you know, it was me that gave you that idea, but this is something that they need to do with the G70. Look at hybridization, not necessarily with the diesel, but definitely with the petrol, maybe a plug-in hybrid, but also this kind of design as an EV, that would go down well. And Hyundai Group aren't exactly a nervous group when it comes to making bold design decisions regarding their electric vehicles. Ioniq 6, anybody? Who'd have thought we'd get a car based on a 1930s Streamliner? So that's the thing with the shooting brake. It looks amazing. Granted, it's not as practical as its rivals, but it still feels very special in here. Very comfortable, jam-packed full of kit. Yeah, it's a very lovely car, and I cannot wait to see more Genesis cars on the road in the future. If I could, I would keep hold of this. It's absolutely blooming lovely. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Genesis G70 shooting brake, finally here in the UK. As always, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell notifications icon to let you know when I, Dave the Auto Bear, bring out a new video. Any questions or comments about the shooting brake you want me to answer, put them down below. And of course, don't forget to follow on social media, X, Twitter, Threads, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, you know, all that lot. And yeah, have yourselves a wonderful day. I am going to enjoy driving the G70 for the next couple of hours before it goes dark and get myself home. But in the meantime, have yourselves a great day, and I will catch you all in the next video. So take care, everybody, and bye-bye.